Going back a little, do you think your father was right and doing a PhD was a waste of time? Or do you think having done your post graduation and your doctorate has helped you in any manner?
In my particular case, it has not been a wrong decision, but I think generally it might well be. In my case, I found very curiously that while it doesn't help directly, it doesn't get you more briefs, it doesn't propel you into a certain direction immediately. In my particular case, it had the general impact of image building as a person who's erudite to some extent.
Right.
And therefore people trusted you in the years where you required trust.
Right.
So people believed that here was a learned person. Now if the learned person messed up in actually conducting a case, it won't last to the second case.
True.
But if you were able to use that advantage initially, which I found clearly did work.
Right.
So I think academic learning, good credentials and education does help. Maybe not in the narrow sense of a PhD, but yes, higher degrees do help.
You were in college just a few years after the emergency. Now, was there anything that about your experiences in the emergency that you might have carried into your PhD topic, which till today I understand remains unpublished?
I started my PhD because I was fascinated with due process.
Okay.
My original theme paper submitted was on due process, and one of the major reasons I took up PhD was because H.W.R. Wade, later
Right.
on Sir William Wade, who was then fairly old, took me on as one of his pupils. He was not taking
Wow.
on hardly any pupils in those days. He was the top of he was the master of Gonville and
Right.
Keyes College, and he said, well, you go into due process if you want to. And to my horror, I discovered after 3 months that due process is a humongous field. It's just too large. So by a process of elimination, just from a utilitarian perspective to actually get something done,
Right.
I ended up working on suspension of due process, which is another name for emergency powers.
Right.
So that's how I stumbled onto emergency powers. It is clearly the first treatment of that subject, at least in that comprehensive a degree, because I dealt with 4 jurisdictions,
Right.
with India, England, US, and with international law. It's a 2 lakh word thesis. The word limit in Cambridge is 1 lakh, 100,000.
Right.
So I put 100,000 research material into footnotes, into volume 2. And at that time, it is the only comparative study.
Right.
And to date, I believe that there have been very few. A co-student with me at that time later on went, many years later, to publish one on Australian emergency powers,
Right.
H.P. Lee.
Right.
And much, much later, Venkat at Dublin University did a comparative study on CDs of the emergency powers in various nations.
Right.
But it's extraordinary how few people have published on emergency. Now the reason it's not been published as a book is one of the great tragedies of my life. I came back, and as an academic, remember, at Cambridge, I was teaching as well. And imbued with great zeal and idealism, I said, I will do it myself. So for 2 years, Mr. Trivedi, D.M. Trivedi of N.M. Tripathi, which was the
Right.
leading law publisher, was actually sitting in my office every other week. And subsequently, when he became old, Mr. Majmudar, his number 2, was sitting with me, saying, we'll do it this time, and we'll do this time. I kept saying, I'll do it this summer holiday, and this the Shara holiday. And my practice grew, and I became more and more busy, and I gave no holidays to it. And eventually, Mr. Trivedi died, Mr. Majmudar left, and subsequently was not here. And the whole thing just became one long project. So the principle I had followed for my PhD, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which is why I did my PhD in 3.5 years. I didn't follow in the publication, which I wish I had, because at that time they said again and again that they'd just give it to somebody who would just touch it up. It was
Right.
fresh and contextual.
Right.
It could have been done by 1990 or so.
Right.
It is now actually being looked at by somebody to update it, but you know,
Really?
it's a massive exercise because it's now 25 odd years old. But I believe that it has material on common law and on subjects which right from common law emergency powers, Irish cases, military acting in aid of civil authority, statutory emergency powers, the US war doctrine. It's a lot of material. Maybe somebody who's now looking at it will be able to get some research assistants together.